Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Melissa Román. Melissa, we actually had her on the podcast a little while back. If you missed that episode, I go look for it. You might want to hear it. It was really great to hear a lot of her story about how she went from being really naive, and I don't mean that in an attacking way at all, but just not knowing much about good scriptural examples of being spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded. And God just did some wonderful work in her life to bring her to the point where she's actually coaching and training others. So please don't miss that episode. I highly encourage you to go back to it. But Melissa, I imagine that some of our listeners today didn't hear that, or maybe they won't go back and listen to it. Their loss. But let's catch people up to speed just a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you serve with now, and we'll get into some of your history here in a second because we have more of that to go over. But introduce yourself a little bit more, please.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. So I'm from Costa Rica. Actually, half Costa Rican, half Nicaraguan, 100% Latina. I don't look like a Latina, but either way, I take it.
It's all good.
Yeah, I'm 28 years old, and now I'm serving with the CMM, Center for Mission Mobilization, and in Peru.
Yeah, in Peru. That's right. So you're from Costa Rica. We're recording this in the U.S., but you're basically based out of Peru. So you are a world traveler, young lady.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. All right. And so, what is your role? Because I know this is developing. You're newer with Center for Mission Mobilization. You already have some duties and responsibilities. But what is your current role and plan for the next several months or even year or two?
Okay. The main thing is I will be training missionaries with the SRS bootcamp around Latin America in Spanish.
Okay. All right. So to a certain degree, you're just going to be a better Latina version of me.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Half of you, because I'm 4'9".
You're 4'9". Yeah. Well, no, I'm super excited that you're stepping into this role. One of the more common feedback that questions or requests that Support Raising Solutions gets is for, hey, can we get this translated? Or can anybody come and do a boot camp in this language or that language? And obviously it just makes so much sense for SRS to really step into multiple languages, but Spanish is definitely top of the list with that. And of course Dave Flynn, a lot of people don't know Dave Flynn, but Dave is, I really think he was the brains in the outfit that really helped create what the boot camp is. Of course, Steve Shadrach did it for years, but Dave Flynn came along and spiced it up and made it more adult education, and kind of Dave and Shadrach kind of handed me the baton, and I've been doing the boot camp since 2014. But turns out my Spanish isn't so great, and yours really is. Yours is really great because native speaker, right?
Yeah, people say that to me. Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, I'm super excited that you're going to be stepping in and helping train boot camps in wherever God takes you, because it could be in the U.S., it could be Central America, it could be South America, and so being based out of Peru, obviously, you have already seen, or going to see a lot of things. But for those that don't know your story, just real briefly, I hope people listen to the last podcast, but you came to something called Support Raising Leaders Conference, and God met you there, and you walked away with a few really key ideas. One was you needed to get fully funded because you're already supposed to be overseeing others, but I think you said you were like, 5% of what you needed to have. Secondarily, you wanted to help those others that you were overseeing get fully funded. And also God was birthing or further birthing in you this idea of being a part of mobilization. And so let's pick up that thread from that past episode right there. As you left the Support Raising Leaders Conference and you realized, I got to be a good example for people. You had 30 some people that helped, even gave you special gifts to help get you to that conference in the first place. So let's pick it up right there. So what did you do when you left Arizona and you went back to Costa Rica and you're like, wow, I need to start applying some of this stuff?
Yeah, so I went back to Costa Rica with a bunch of ideas in my mind, in my heart, and I was like, okay, the first step, okay, I'm gonna share this project and invite people to join my team.
Okay.
And I went to this, I had a meeting with these 30 people, each of them, right, individually, and I asked them, and 28, 29 of them, they say yes, and they still are with me. They are still with me in this journey, 1.5 years.
That's fantastic. So for our listeners that maybe they've never been to a boot camp, they've never been to a Support Agents and Leaders Conference, which, by the way, listener, if you're not sure which to go to, the bulk of you probably need to go to a boot camp first. The Support Agents and Leaders Conference is more for people that oversee and help train others that need to raise support. But Melissa, so when you went back, previously you probably talked to some people, you'd emailed or WhatsApped or messaged to people, but when you decided, wow, I don't just need like short-term funds, I need something consistent, I need something regular to free me up to do ministry. You went back and started trying to meet with people face to face, huh? Mm-hmm. And so how is your ask different from, hey, help send me to this conference, to, hey, invest in this ministry with me, do this ministry with me, not just one time, but like on a regular basis? What changed? I realize there's going to be cultural differences and things like that, but so try and dumb it down for the Americans like me to understand, but what did you functionally change?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Actually, my asking have been getting mature through the last year. But at the beginning, the first time that I met with these 30 people, singles, couples, I don't know, it wasn't a normal asking, because I want to be accountability with them, with the money that they invest in the conference and etc. But also I asked them like, do you want to join with this project? And they say yes. But actually I didn't want to change something that about the asking that US people, they were teaching me, I was like, I'm just gonna ask them. I didn't ask about amount or something because I was really ashamed or scared. The second time.
So you were dealing with kind of being a rookie at this. You were also trying to walk through what's culturally appropriate or not. And then just like everybody else in the world I've ever talked to when it comes to support raising, you were dealing with the honor shame culture. You were dealing with I'm scared. And then you were dealing with, okay, am I scared because this is me? Or am I scared because I'm not used to this? Or am I scared because I'm doing something wrong? Like there can be all sorts of different reasons, right?
Exactly. But I have so much passion in my heart that it was like, I need to share this, and I want to invite them, and that didn't break my heart that much, or I don't know if that makes sense. But I didn't have a lot of shame in that moment, because they already gave me their money in a good way.
Sure.
So
that probably gave you a little courage to go back.
Exactly. Thank you. So that happened to me the first season that I did fundraising with new people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. I'm going to try and re-summarize what you just said here, because I think I understand you, but I'm not always that bright. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
When you went back to Costa Rica and you had a conviction that you needed to truly get spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded, you began to try and sit down with people that were potential partners. Some of them had already, given a special gift to help you even go to a conference, but that was like that was like a one-off, and you were going back. So for those people, you felt a little freer and easier to go back and say, so you've invested a little. What if you kept investing, because here's the vision. So but then you felt a little different with people that you had never talked to about it before. Then you were kind of dealing with some more, you said shame. Is that true?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so for those of us that are American that don't really deal with shame that much, now some Americans do, and for those that don't know, America is quickly becoming more of an honor shame culture, but it's not all the way there. Okay. Explain what you would be ashamed of, because there are some Americans that might not quite get that, for better or worse. They might not quite get that.
Okay, yeah. So after I met these 30 people, 2 months later, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I don't know, take free time from the office. I request that to my new boss. He allowed me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend this whole month, because one of the things it was that I need to be focused only on fundraising.
Yes, yeah.
So
for those that don't know, you fundraise so much faster when it is almost your exclusive priority. People that go, oh, I'm just going to kind of eat around the edges and I'll do this over the next 3 or 4 years, you're never done.
Yeah.
And you never even come close. In most cases, you're never even going to come close to what your actual need and goal is.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So
all
I
right,
had
so you
that.
got the freedom to go out and do it.
I spent February 2020 before the COVID, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this time, and so I started sharing or asking people like, do you want to have a coffee with me, and sharing my project and etc. But the things that I was so ashamed, it was like I was working in my home country. I wasn't going overseas, so I don't know if I'm worth it. That was like the main thing.
Okay.
So I was like,
okay, so that actually isn't that different from a lot of Westerners.
Okay.
And from that standpoint, a lot of people struggle with and need to understand that it is their job, it is their ministry, it is actually good, holy, blessed work to take the time to raise support, to engage with people, to invite people. It's not a distraction from the real work. It is the work, but whether you're in America or Costa Rica or anywhere else, a lot of times it's been treated kind of like that's not really doing ministry.
Yeah.
And yet it is, because it's inviting people into the Great Commission. So you were dealing with all the feels. In that way, I would say that wasn't American of you, that was just human of you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And actually just one person asked me about, but you're in Costa Rica. The other ones, they were like...
Right. And that's the second idea.
Yeah.
There's the idea that to be a missionary, you have to leave some man-made border. And that's not necessarily true. You don't have to cross the border of Costa Rica or Nicaragua or the United States to now you're a missionary.
Exactly.
And by the way, that really isn't just a Costa Rican thing. I had a person who I consider to be a friend now, but I had a person who was on staff at a church who was a quote-unquote missions pastor in the U.S. tell me several years ago, well, the church can't really support you, because you live in Arkansas. And I was like, wait, what? He goes, well, you're not in this other place or this other thing. And I was like, well, what about this other couple? They're doing really similar work to me. I know that the church supports them. He goes, well, yeah, but they moved to Texas.
Oh.
And I went, okay, that is a different country. But and I said, no, wait a minute here. I was like, just want to play this out. I'm not mad at you, but understand what you're saying. It comes down to, I'm only a missionary based upon my zip code or by what somebody put on a map. And to his credit, he went, okay, you know what? You're right. I gotta rethink this.
Oh, wow.
And it was a few months later, that church actually did join my support
Praise
team.
God.
But I'm also kind of mouthy. I kind of push back. I ask questions, and some people are real good at that, and some people it makes them really uncomfortable. So I appreciate that gentleman's humility in walking in that with me. But the reality is, missionaries all over the world sometimes feel like, well, I'm not really doing God's work if I don't travel some great distance, right? And that's another lie that the devil would want us to believe. And it was certainly something, because you were doing your job.
Yeah.
You were based out of Costa Rica. You were helping to train and oversee others who were doing missions. But yeah, you kind of felt like you were a second-class missionary.
Yeah, totally. Or third one.
Yeah, or third class,
yeah,
right.
really, really far from the field.
Okay, all right.
And the other one, obviously, is the thing that for us, one of the things is that we honor a lot of a relationship. Like, that's really our principal goal, to maintain our relationship.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do something that break our relationship.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that brings me shame back then, because I love them. They were friends or they were family. So it was like,
But you were putting your relationship on the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. This
So
is
how much do you
interesting.
really love Jesus, Melissa? Right?
That was pretty, I don't know, a holy moment.
I say that jokingly, but yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to is, did Jesus call me to do this or didn't he?
Exactly.
And is my relationship with him and what he's calling me to do more important than keeping the peace?
Exactly. Well, that's still I don't know, a big deal for me right now. I'm
Sure, it
like,
can
okay,
be a
it is
motivator.
worth it or not?
Yeah.
But he is, you know.
He absolutely is, but that doesn't mean that there can't be moments where you go, oh, wait a minute here, why am I doing this?
Exactly.
And I think even as I would say most people I know who are in full-time ministry that raise and live off support, most of them at one point or on recurring points they have that kind of gut check or that heart check, if you will, where they go, so why am I here? Mm-hmm. Why am I? Which actually I think can be really healthy, as long as they answer it.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they answer it. Okay, so you go back to Costa Rica. You're sitting down with people. You're doing asks, both the people that had one-time supported a short-term project, as well as people that you had never talked to before. Mm-hmm. And everybody's context is different. So people listening don't take into mind that, well, if this is how long it took Melissa, this is how long it'll take me, because that's not necessarily true. Mm-hmm. But in your case, in your context, how long did it take from the time you really started trying to raise your regular monthly support, from the day you started doing that to the point when you were like, hey, I'm fully funded. I can stop support raising all the time and start going to do the work?
Well, that's a long story that I don't want to do it long.
Okay,
so the
so do the short version.
Exactly. So I did fundraising in 2 seasons.
Okay.
So when I went back to Costa Rica, I spent 1 month fully time on that.
Okay, so full-time work for 1 month.
Exactly. I get to 40%, something like that.
Okay, well,
and
that's a good
back.
jump from 5 to 40%.
Yeah, praise God for that.
Yeah,
and I was
praise
like,
the Lord.
oh, but my heart was broken because I want to get 100%
You want to be 100%.
in 1 month.
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
Everybody wants to get, Shadrach with his 100 days idea, such a good idea. And there are people who do get fully funded in 30, 60, 90 days. It does happen. I wouldn't say that's the norm for everybody. Mm-hmm. I'd just say, yeah, everybody wants to be that lady or that guy that's like, I worked for a week and I'm fully funded. And that you just don't meet very many people that
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it was a pretty cool thing because in that month, God showed it to me that I was trusting in the method and not in Him. So it was like, okay.
Right.
Okay.
A little spiritual maturity moment there.
Okay. Gotcha, God. Okay.
There's no magic method.
Exactly. So I went back to the office full time, and in that moment, I saw how working 8 to 5. Mm-hmm. 8 to 5, and keep fundraising, it wasn't a good idea. So I had this struggle, I keep pushing, and suddenly I got stuck in 40%. So after 2 or 3 months after that, I end my commitment with the organization that I was working in Costa Rica, and I jumped to this new chapter or adventure to the CMM, to join the CMM between COVID,
Okay, all right.
So after I joined or I applied to the CMM, that is the organization that I work with.
Which Support Raising Solutions is under the Center for Mission Mobilization umbrella. So that's why you happen to be up in Arkansas and
Exactly.
we're recording this right now, even though you live in Peru.
Exactly. That was the time that I had to get fully funded. If I want to be with them, I have to get fully funded.
Yeah.
So that was the second season of fundraising.
Okay.
So that took me October, November, December, like 4 to 5 months to be 100%.
So just to break that down for people, you raised your full, or a good, not the primary, but I'd say a large chunk of your support in about a month's worth of meetings and full focus, and you weren't doing 1,000 other things. Then you changed organizations, the pandemic hit, a whole bunch of different things happened. But still, you raised the bulk of your support in an additional 4 months or so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And by the way, that is fairly common for people to take 3 to 6 months In fact, I'd say that's the norm. Most people, it takes 3 to 6 months. For some people in certain cultures, especially if they're single individuals, we're finding people that it's a lot quicker for them. For people that live in cultures or more Western places that are, and it's not just a place, but they might have a significant need. Meaning, like I have a good buddy who he has 4 kids and a mortgage, and he lives in one of the American cities where he's called to live there, but it is expensive to live there. It took him more like a year to raise his full funding. But there are people that fall all over the map in between all that. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is you weren't weird in that. You were actually pretty normal in how much time it took, and it does take time. If you're enjoying these podcasts and they're hitting on topics that you love, consider following Support Raising Solutions on social media for everyday biblical and practical support raising advice as you're in the process of raising your support. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Support Raising Solutions and on Twitter at Support Raising. All right, so Melissa, tell us about the support raising culture in Costa Rica. I have seen and I have witnessed that support raising, not only is it biblical, and as we were talking before, it's for all people, all tribes, all colors, all nations, all languages, like the whole 9 yards. But there can be some cultural differences, but biblical truth supersedes cultural differences, but sometimes there are cultural differences. I think for our listeners that might be more Latin, that they might be interested to hear, okay, specifically, what were some of the things that you learned to engage with in Costa Rica?
Yeah, the first one, and I think that is the main thing, is to share a coffee with them. Like, no, like
that's your love language. That works.
Yeah,
out
totally.
Really well.
Yeah, no, like. I think I would say like really small details. And I struggle with other Latinos when I share about the SRS method or, I don't know, perspective, because they ask me like, yeah, but that's an American thing. And I was like, okay, let's grab a coffee and talk, because my experience and I don't know, I think it's something with God in my mind or in my heart. And he was like, I want to apply 100% of the things that I was learning from SRS, because I didn't see as a U.S. culture. I think it's biblical. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna meet 2 people, I'm gonna share the vision, I'm gonna ask with an amount. Right. And I'm just gonna wait until they ask me, they give me an answer, and I'm gonna follow up. And
so we know that Paul, for instance, in Philippians, he was sending a brother for the gift, meaning, again, it doesn't say specifically, Paul is getting $3,000 for the Church of Philippi, but there seems to be, like, Paul knows what it is that he asked for, and he knows what the church is sending him for the missionary journey that he is on. And so that's not an American thing. That's a biblical thing. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is you needed to, at least with your brothers and sisters in Costa Rica, you needed to kind of help walk them through a little bit more of the, hey, this is a biblical thing. This is a God thing. This is not just like an American program. Yeah.
And actually the interesting thing is that the comments that I have heard about Melissa, the SRS tools or the SRS perspective of fundraising is a U.S. culture. People say that to me.
So they wonder when you're talking about training others and raising support, and you're talking about what you're planning to do in your new season of ministry, so to speak. Some people have commented, well, you're just trying to spread like American stuff, and you're basically saying, well, no, hold on, right? Yeah, but the thing is that the people that say that to me, they're missionaries. No, it's not the people that I'm asking them. I don't know if... Okay, no, I get it. What we're saying is the pushback that you've gotten in Costa Rica, it wasn't from people being invited to partner with you. It was from the missionaries that have learned some things that weren't necessarily biblical, but it's what they had learned. And so you were, to a certain degree, as you were training others who are learning to raise and live off support, you were kind of have to unpack some of the lies they were believing and saying, hey, that's not an American thing. Here's what the Bible says.
Exactly.
Okay.
And actually, with the people that I was invited to invest in this project, they were like, whoa, thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the people on your support team were kind of an easier audience, so to speak, than the actual missionaries.
I mean, obviously, it's God, providing, and it's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I love them. I'm here because of them, actually. Yeah. So it's like, it was so good to listen that, and they keep saying that. I mean, I hear a lot of those things today when I send them my newsletter. Yeah. Thank you for making me part of this. Thank you for, and I was like, wow, it's pretty cool because it is like another way to see God's hands, like
to build a
confirmation.
Kingdom,
it's like, whoa, this is actually working.
Very cool.
So that's amazing.
Very cool. In all walks of life, I don't know how you'd say this in Spanish or how people might, but at least in the U.S., there's kind of a phrase that is true, that it's easier to learn a good habit than it is to unlearn a bad habit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How would you say that in Costa Rica? Or maybe even in Spanish?
Yeah. I'm working with my English mind. Es más fácil aprender un mal hábito que aprender algo nuevo.
Okay. I'm just going to trust that you didn't just call me a name. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah,
Very
you have to trust me in that.
Yeah, but in the US that's true with, it's easier to stay in shape if I want to go, like you told us in that last episode that you like to run. It's easier to stay in shape, keep your body healthy by running consistently than it is to stop and pick it up next month and run a lot for a couple of days and stop and pick it up the following month. It's harder to unlearn bad habits and than it is to just simply keep up a good habit. And I think that's true with support raising globally. Not just American, not just Costa Rican, not just Peruvian, but globally, we do have a lot of people in the missions world that have learned bad habits, and they're believing things that aren't true, but they speak about them as if they're gospel when it comes to support raising. Actually,
when I was in that season, in the second one, I was talking with one of a missionary couple. They have served 10 or 15 years overseas. So they were like, okay, they have experience. And I share with them this SRS perspective that I was getting, trying to get fully funded with this budget. It was a healthy budget, but in Latinos' eyes, it's a high budget, So their advice was, oh, that's a really high budget. You should load it. You should be
more budget driven and less vision driven.
Yeah, exactly.
Which no one ever says it like that, but that's what they're saying.
Exactly. It's like, if you want to go overseas, you need to get a lower budget because you're never gonna make it.
Right.
And I was like, I'm in 80%. Yeah. And they were like,
they're like,
and they changed the subject.
Right. They're like, oops, we just gave you bad advice. How about those bears?
Exactly. So, I mean, missionaries that love God, and I know that is their experience, but that's the lies that I was hearing in my journey of trying to get fully funded.
Which we kind of transitioned here. You're not just talking about Costa Rica now. You're talking about missionaries on a global scale, which was my next question anyway. Is what are you seeing globally when it comes to missionaries that need to be spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded to just simply to accomplish what God's put in front of them? I mean, you've already started to answer that partially in saying we have people that are not necessarily believing biblical truth, and so that's kind of like disabling them. That's hampering them from being more effective in their ministry.
Yeah, well, obviously that. I mean, one of the things, I don't know if that just happened in Latin America or what, but it's like they say, I'm gonna take a step back, but they say try to raise your support. I don't know, if you get 30-40%, okay, then move overseas and trust God in the things that you don't have. And we preach, or I'm gonna step outside, they preach about that like a faith thing with God. So, I mean, I don't want to say that God is not going to provide. God is going to still provide. But I think that, I mean, we need to honor the grace of God.
Yeah.
You know? So I heard other person told me, like, I already told you, I raised $400 and I trust God in the rest. And he was like, you need to trust God. Like, okay, you can try to be fully funded, but trust God. But he was saying in a different way, like...
He's saying trust God, but don't do anything.
Exactly.
Instead of trust God and do your part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things is like missionaries in Latin America, or the things that I heard is like, I don't know, it's like, it's so a shame to us people because they have a lot of bad experience.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart because it's like, I mean, I know, and that's a really awful thing, but they didn't have a training, they didn't have a coaching, they didn't have accountability partner to work with them. So it was like, okay, let's do this in different.
So as someone who is going to be training more missionaries, specifically Spanish speaking missionaries, I kind of have a word of caution for you. Prepare to continue to have your heart broken in that way, because it's hit me a lot. And the biggest, baddest, ugliest argument I ever had with my best friend was because he was a missionary, and now he's fully funded now, so I'm running ahead many years. But at the time, we started talking about funding, and I started challenging some of his misconceptions and the lies that he was believing. And it was the maddest he ever got at me. And he said some really unkind things, and I have since confronted him, and he's still my best friend, and I give him a hard time, and we love each other, and he's actually becoming a facilitator in boot camps now. So like, all is good, praise the Lord. But you know what happened is I hit a nerve as we started talking about some of these things. And so I think there are a lot of missionaries on a global scale that have learned a lot of bad habits. Some are just because they were doing the best with what they had. In fact, most of them are that way. So I say that in grace. I don't say that in judgment. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take some dedication, and it's going to take people like you, Melissa, that are willing to step into people's pain and love them. And say, hey, wait a minute, you're calling that thing Costa Rican, or you're calling that thing Peruvian, or you're calling that thing Western, you're calling that American, or you're calling that a white person's thing, or you're calling that like whatever. Like, look, can we set that aside for a second and let's look at what the scripture says, and let's look at people from all backgrounds that are actually applying this and having partnerships in ministry, because it's not about the money, it's about the partnership, it's about the Great Commission. And I just gotta tell you, that takes time. I mean, you know this.
Yeah, totally.
But think of your journey over the past few years, and think of the journey of others you're working with, and go, hey, there's still more journey in front of you. But I appreciate so much that you're stepping into this, and I'm excited to have you start leading SRS boot camps in Spanish. So that's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And it's like, I was talking with a person 2 weeks ago, I don't know, and he was saying that we need stories that there are success stories, success story. Yeah, thank you. Because we need to encourage to our brothers or our Latinos brother to see like, okay, that works, and not because of the method. Again, it's because of a God thing. Right. But okay, take these tools. You can do it. I'm gonna walk with you. Amen. And I have seen missionaries, young adult guys, I don't know, crying in doubt about their calling in God because they don't have the money. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you can doubt about your calling in other areas, but not just, not for something as simple as the money. And I say that carefully, you know.
I'm sure you do, yeah.
So it's like...
It's also God owns absolutely everything, cattle on 1,000 hills and everything in front of you. It's not like your God is this weak, little, poor God. He is the God.
Exactly. And I had that moment too. When I was raising my support in that second season, I got stuck in 1 week. I cried and I was like, God is never going to provide me 100%. This is so much. And I remember that I said with God, I was drinking my coffee, obviously, and I was like, okay, God, I need to ask you this. Like, you really can provide me 100%? Like it was an honest question. Like, let's
Jesus,
talk about money.
I know you say you love me, Jesus, but really? Do you really? It's like that, but on a different level. It's about the finances and him providing for the thing he told you to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, and it was a truly honest question. Like, God, you own everything, but can you provide me this? And his answer was, I care more about having 100% of your heart, trusting, confidence, dependence on me than if I gave you 100% of the money. And I was like, okay, excuse me, I'm gonna keep going with my work,
No,
so
that's awesome.
it's like,
well, it's just you had intimacy with Jesus about this. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, it was like a godly moment, or a God moment, I don't know, because it was like, oh yeah, okay. This is it. And actually, I just want to share this because I was listening to a podcast, to an SRS podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
former
exactly.
episode of this.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you were talking about the difference between a season and a process. And fundraising is it's not just a season, it's a process that God works with your faith. And I don't know if you remember, it was a long time ago. Probably you don't.
I don't, but
it
sounds like something I might say.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool because it was like, okay, God cares more about my faith than if he gave me the money. So it's not about the money, and we know about that. And it's like, okay, I really need to share this with my Latino brothers. They need to hear this because after I spent just 4 years in Costa Rica. And just like, I don't know, one moment, I only saw one moment, or I only speak with somebody that he thought about different, he had a different perspective about fundraising, and he was from Europe, so it doesn't count that much. The other missionaries, the only thing that I heard about fundraising, it was like, this is unnecessary evil, I hate doing this, and all these things.
All these negative things.
Exactly, thank you.
It wasn't about partnership, it wasn't about growing the Great Commission, involving the church and the church growing on a global scale. It was like, well, it's kind of a bad thing, but it's what you got to do the good things.
Totally.
Which is, like, that's just like, I don't know.
We're missing something really cool about fundraising.
It seems like a jail cell to me. To think about support raising it as a necessary evil, to me it feels like a jail cell.
Okay.
Whereas thinking about it as something I get to do, I get to invite people to be a part of something that's bigger than me, that's bigger than them. That's like freedom, man. That's like flying.
Yeah, totally.
That's just like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, we need to talk more about this.
Yeah.
We need to share stories. We need to keep doing this. And the cool thing is that actually my team, my support team, they have now a different perspective about fundraising, and they are seeing, I don't know, looking at the missions like a different way. So praise God for that.
Amen. Well, listen, you've been such a joy for us. We need to kind of like wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today, and for our listeners, Melissa, let's just kind of do a little plug about Support Raising Solutions boot camps. Typically, we have them in the U.S. Monthly. That's not always totally accurate, as we have found with the pandemic. So things go through changes, but more and more we are trying to have more Spanish-speaking boot camps. Yes, those will be in the U.S. on occasion, but also in Central America, South America. And if people want to find the next Spanish-speaking boot camp, where would they go look for that?
In the website of SRS Bootcamp.
Okay, and so that is supportraisingsolutions.org, and if you click on boot camp, off and on to the side, there will be some upcoming dates of boot camps that you could plan to attend and register for and all that good stuff. So do you know of any particular boot camps at the time that we're recording this? Because some people might not hear this till later on, but do you already have one on your calendar coming up soon?
Yeah, we have one on the first week of August.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so we're recording this in July, and quite honestly, by the time this is pushed out, it'll probably be after that, but there will be more coming, right?
Yeah, we're trying to do a boot camp in Spanish every 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Melissa, Román, it has been a total joy to have you be a part of the podcast today. Thank you. Actually, did you know, I don't know, you probably know this. This is actually the second podcast you've been on with us, so thank you so much. And will you please be a guest again in the future?
I would think about it, but yeah, no, obviously, yes, totally.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, hey, it is my habit to, not always, but typically to try and give the guest kind of the last word in the episode. And so, my friend, you have the microphone. What is the final exhortation for our listeners today?
Yeah, so I think that the main idea of this is, if we need to go through fundraising to ask people to be ashamed and after that just asking about an amount, etc., is because we want to accomplish what God have calling us to do. Even if it's in America, Africa, Asia, etc., it's like we need to do that in order to accomplish his vision, his mission, etc., because he is worth it. This is a Jesus thing, and just be bold and try to enjoy that path and enjoy the journey. And even it is the U.S. people sharing these tools is still a kingdom of God thing, and I think that if it is in the Bible, so it is true. It's not an American thing. So yeah, thank you for that time. And just say, pura vida. That's our phrase in Costa Rica.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.